And hello, we are live once again tonight on the Canary TV every Tuesday and Thursday during lockdown. We have the unmatched talents of Nicky Gordon joining us live from Sardina del Hollywood in the southeast of Gran Canaria. We're just going to bring her into the studio now. Remember, if you're watching on facebook.com/thecanary.tv, or any of our other channels that directly stream this, then you can comment and ask your questions directly below in the comments. I'm hoping Nicky is with us now. We're just going to check backstage. How are you doing, Nicky? Nicky, can you hear us? Oh, we seem to have a small problem with Nicky's mic. Just give me a second. Let's see what we can do here. As you may have seen from the loose man, we get the occasional technical issue with these live streams. Of course, we're all streaming directly from our living rooms. Nicky Gordon, can we hear you? No, we're getting nothing through there. Okay, I'm going to kick you out of the studio, Nicky. If you can try and come back in, let's see if that works any better for you. I don't know what's happening with your microphone there. Good. So we are in a strange time right now here on Gran Canaria. We've had the Gran Canaria lockdown, as with the rest of Spain, since the 14th of March 2020. So we're just now finishing our fourth week. That's a full month of lockdown. From the very first moments that lockdown began here on the Canary Islands and throughout Spain, Guardia Civil and police were on the streets, along with the army being deployed in quite fast order to make sure that as many people as possible socially distanced. Tonight we're hoping to be joined by Ms. Nicky Gordon, who is trying to reach us from her abode and palatial accommodation in Sardina del Hollywood. We want to hear from you, so if you've got any questions about what has been happening here on Gran Canaria, if you're living on Gran Canaria and you want to ask us any questions about what you are allowed to do or not to do, who's allowed out, who isn't allowed out, under what circumstances, feel free to comment in the comments below. If you're watching through any of our restreams, I'm afraid we won't see your comments, so you'll have to go to facebook.com/theCanaryTV, and we'll be able to see your messages from there. I'm hoping Nicky is going to join us again shortly, but until she does, I'll just talk you through some of what's been going on over the last week since we saw Nicky on Thursday. So we've, of course, had the Easter bank holiday here in Spain. The original 2-week lockdown was extended from the end of March through to the Monday following the Easter weekend. We're now on the Tuesday following that, and that was a strict lockdown. That final 2 weeks of the last 4 was one where all workers were being asked to stay at home. We've now returned to the situation as it was back in the first 2 weeks of our lockdown here, whereby certainly non-essential workers are being allowed carefully to return back to work, and so that means people who are in any sort of job, though it may be non-essential, they are allowed, if safety precautions permit, to return to their workplace. But of course, everything has changed a little bit from when we began all of this. More than 10 million face masks have been given out on public transport as of this Monday, and construction workers have returned to their work. And indeed, most other people, if they are working in a job that allows them to carry on without endangering others, then they have been allowed to return to their workplace. But of course, social distancing rules still are being maintained. and the lockdown still continues. I think the official date of end is currently 26th of April, but that is looking to be extended still further till May 10th. And of course, most of our viewers here will be working within the tourism industry on Gran Canaria, which is completely flatlined at the moment. We're not looking till probably middle of summer before any remnants of that come back. I've just seen Nicky has managed to return to us in the studio. Let's just see if her microphone's working, and hopefully we can get on with hello. Yes,
can you hear me
do.
now?
Hi, we can hear you now. How are you, Nicky Gordon? What's been happening?
I've thrown the laptop away. I'm now on the mobile phone, so I managed to swap them over fast.
Aren't we lucky in the 21st century having small supercomputers in our hands that we can replace our normal computers with?
No, it's fantastic. It's been a pretty stressful day for a lot of people on the island. Quite a sad day because people are starting to panic again.
But of course, we predicted this to some extent, and so it's kind of part of what we foresaw. And so on that basis, I'm hoping that people don't panic too much more, because yes, people are going to feel quite out of sorts right now, aren't they?
Yeah, basically, my advice to everybody is, in hindsight, it was very lovely that the government published all these plans and everything was going to come into effect, and they were going to help the autonomos and they were going to help the tenants, but they haven't managed to get everything together quite as fast as we presumed that they would. So basically, there's a lot of stress, a lot of negative comments. Basically, a lot of people are saying that it's a lot of rubbish. It's not. The system, they have made mistakes. They shouldn't have told us, because I copied the information they gave me. I shared it with you. Everybody's been going to the banks.
If I can just recap just a little bit, just for anyone who hasn't seen our previous shows and so therefore may not be familiar with the information that we've been giving out over the last couple of weeks. Essentially, as soon as Spain went into lockdown, of course, lots of companies were suspended. Some people, quite a lot of people, especially in the tourism industry, lost their jobs for a mixture of reasons, whether that be employers taking the opportunity to get rid of staff, or indeed more to the point, because tourism has flatlined now. A lot of businesses knew that they were just not going to survive for 2 weeks or more without income. So there's a huge change in the situation here in the Canary Islands. I think we're just about reaching up to about the 200,000 people mark who have been suspended from their jobs. So their businesses are supposed to still continue even though they have no incomes, and the government have undertaken to pay them up to, I think it's 80% of whatever their contracted wages are for the time while they're out. But of course, they've taken into account all sorts of things like normally recoverable holidays, like Easter holidays, and it's been a very, very slow motion to try to get this all in action and make sure people are getting paid. And then on top of that, of course, we had people worried about rent and mortgages, and so a whole bunch of announcements were made to try to soften the blow of people not having an income and not being able to pay their rents. And so we were told that there would be micro loans and micro credit available to people, as well as unemployment payments being made without too much question to those who've lost their jobs, and indeed payments being made to those who've been suspended from their work, as well as autonomos who seem to be last in the queue with all of this, also receiving some sort of payment for the government, on the basis that the government of Spain does not want the economy just to go straight down the pan. They're trying to keep everyone focused and alive. However, here we are, we're on the 14th of April, and I have not yet heard of anyone who has received any of these extra payments. Is that about right?
Yes. The autonomo loans that go through the bank, which are to help you support yourself for the next 6 to 9 months. That's not just while we're not working, that's also to help you carry on paying your rent for your businesses, help pay your staff when you go back. Those are confirmed. Quite a lot of them. I've got myself, mine's been okayed. We're just waiting to find out when it's all actually going to be paid out.
Right.
That's really positive. The rental assistance with the microcredit 0% loan, I spoke to the director of Santander today, and she was lovely. Basically, they're reckoning about another week or so to get it into the system. There was a lot of negative comments from people saying that they'd been offered loans, but with high interest. Those aren't what you want. Those are nothing to do with COVID, with the coronavirus. These are their standard. If you're in trouble, we can get you a personal loan.
And in fact, we have to be clear. The finance minister of Spain has very, very clearly stated that with all of these, let's face it, these are brand new schemes that nobody had really foreseen. So they've come up with this very, very quickly, but it's taking them still taking them a very long time to try and get it in action. We had several instances in the very first few days of this of banks saying you can have the government sponsored loan, but you have to take out major insurance, undertake for 5 years of payments, blah, blah, blah. And that's been clearly outlawed. And so anyone who seems to be profiteering off the situation, well, I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to have to be reported if they don't change their ways, right? That's the way that works. But
yeah. And the other really important thing was that the applications for the dole, the unemployment, the paro.
The paro, yeah.
Yeah, they put preference first for the ERTEs. This was the extraordinary suspension of businesses throughout Spain. And they were hoping that people would get paid on the 10th of April, which would be the standard unemployment payment day. Unfortunately, because they were totally bombarded, then the government realised that there were a lot of irregularities with businesses that should have done the RT and didn't. So they had all of those on top. They actually explained that if you fit into the category where you have to support your employers, then you have to have an RT. So there was a lot of reshuffling of paperwork and stuff. So they're saying now that the RT will definitely, we're looking at the 10th to the 15th of May.
And I think we should caveat that, as we did last time when we were talking about the 10th of April date. What we're saying here is it won't be before. It's unlikely to be before the 10th of May. We still don't know exactly what the date. There's no official announcements on when these things will be sorted.
Yeah, but of course, for payment, they could put it in because they do understand. You know, they do feel bad about it, but it's a system that's new and it's just been set up. And basically, there's a lot of people that don't have their appointments to apply for their unemployment until the end of April.
So let me just stop you there, because you've mentioned this a couple of times before, and it's very important for people to understand. Obviously, you're not specifically here talking about people who've had their jobs suspended. They've gone under the ARTES, and therefore, as long as they've got the correct paperwork from their boss, which says this is part of the ARTES, and they've signed that, then that should be automatically going through the system, right? But if you found yourself unemployed, or perhaps you had never or you had not yet signed your contract when the declaration of a state of emergency occurred, then you are officially an unemployed person in Spain. And on that basis, in that case, you have to have actually done something yourself. You have to have reached out to the Social Security and to the unemployment services to say, I am officially unemployed looking for work. Is that right?
Yeah, your bosses, your employers, as soon as they decided that they were going to finish a contract, they weren't going to renew the contracts, the temporary contracts had run out, they basically have left, they have to get their gestors, their accountants, to produce a certificate that they present on your behalf to say that you're now finished with them, but you do have access to the unemployment system, meaning that you haven't stolen, you haven't committed a crime. There's certain requisites from the employers. All the employers will have done this online. You don't receive anything. They put it straight into the system. You then have to go onto the link, which has been on my page, Jobs and Help, Ask Nicky everywhere.
And we'll post it under this video as well for anyone who's watching later.
For about the last 3-4 weeks, it's been there. The problem is they're overloaded. So before you could go in, I could show you now. You go in, you put your postcode and your NI number, you press again and put the code in. You request the first space on the list of questions, and they give you a date, and they email you with the date of when they're going to call you at home to do an online application by phone, and then you forward by email the necessary documents that you would hand over and they would photocopy, i.e. your passport, your residencia and your bank details. The problem is they've got so overloaded, that system can't give out any more appointments at the moment.
Right.
So they've now brought another link in, and this link gives you a pre-appointment. What I'm going to do, I waited, somebody sent it me today. I'll put it on in the morning. So basically, I'll take a photograph of the old link and put a cross through it, and I'll put the new link on, and you have to make an appointment. They send you, it comes up with a confirmation. They will get around to you, but I can't tell you when. I can't tell you if they take preference. It's just a matter of them wading through everything. Normally, the guys in the office work from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. They go through about 70, 80, 90 people a day. They're lovely guys in Maspalomas. You sit down with them and present it all. They're working from home. They're doing hours from, I think it's from 8 o'clock in the morning they start till about 6 in the afternoon. They've taken on extra staff. They're doing everything they can. So all I can say is, if you have just found out, which a lot of the businesses have only just in the last couple of days since we last spoke on Thursday, have decided what they're going to do. People are panicking because they don't know how to access the system. You have to make the appointment. What they're doing now for the people that were never inscribed into the system, you have to sign on like you do in a job centre as actively looking for work. These people, normally before you have an employment appointment, you have to go to the other side and register as actively looking for work. Until you've got your inscripción de empleo and they give you a sheet and you sign on like you do in England, you can do it off your phone every 3 months, you're not eligible for the other side. Now they're doing it all by telephone and email. So basically, I've had 3 or 4 friends and clients that I'm doing it for because they don't speak any Spanish. That's why I said, don't panic. If you do not think you can pick up a phone, talk to somebody in Spanish, listen to what they're saying, answer the questions, all the people that normally do your paperwork, you know who we all are, with the same people year in, year out, contact them and they can do it for you. But basically, I've had the calls for the inscription where they give you an A4 sheet of paper. They email it to me with a Dardi number for signing.
Sorry, what was that? A Dardi number?
The Dardi number is the registration number.
I see.
That you sign on every 3 months. Every time you sign on, you have to sign on exactly the date that's on the sheet. And then they send you another one with a new date 3 months on and a new Dardi number. It's just to control it so that you can't be out of the country. You've got to be in Spain when you actually sign on. But they're actually doing it all. So as well as doing all the applications for the unemployment, they've also got to sign the people on as well. So it seems to be that they're sorting the Dardi and the inscription into the job centre, and then a couple of days later they ring you to sort out the application.
And how much of a, I mean, obviously you've been around the island here for a couple of decades or so, so you will have seen. You will have seen and heard most things that happen here. I mean, how much of a change is that for the benefit systems employees, the people who usually deal with you? Surely, like everyone, they must be undergoing a huge shift in how they do what they do.
Everything's spot on, and they actually help. There's employers that I've sat down with people next to them, and probably a lot of people that I know have had the same situation, and they've said to me, these people can't claim any unemployment because the employer hasn't sent off the certificate to register them, or these people can't claim an employment benefit because they've put the code in that means that they've done something terrible at work and they're not eligible for the dole, so they'd have to go and work somewhere else. And basically they're really, really good. They'll say, listen, go away. sort it out, speak to your head stores, get it corrected, and come back. They are really, really helpful. For a lot of the people that's dole and unemployment's run out, they actually help for the extra payments. It's only about €320 a month, but it's when
something's better than nothing. Yeah,
something's better than nothing. So this is why at the moment it's all new, because we're trying to apply for the people that have accrued time in the system, in the unemployment system, but they haven't been working and they didn't register on for work. So we're trying to get them a Dardy number, as if that they should have done 6 months ago, but they thought they'd find a job straight away. We're trying to correct all the errors, and they're trying to do the best. So as a lot of people have posted today, it will get there. It will get there, and we'll do everything we can to help you. But that's why I started saying 2 weeks ago, now's the time to start cutting back like we did when we were 25 and had €50 a week to live on.
That was 100 years ago, Nicky, for me. 3 years ago for you, obviously.
No, but it's difficult for people, and you can feel that, you can read by the messages. I've received, well, I can't even say how many today, but I understand. When do you think we're going to get paid? Listen, if you don't get paid on the 10th of April, normally I could say to you, it won't be till the 10th of May, but it may be. So all I can say is, after midnight every night, the banking systems update, check online, see if you've got money in your account. When you start receiving it, please drop us a line. Just say on one of my posts, Nicky, I've got my money through, because once it starts, it lifts us all, because we know it's on its way. This is all new to everybody. I don't know until I get mine through. The other thing that I found out today, somebody called, and it was fabulous information, with the people that are waiting for the autonomo unemployment payment. It's slightly different. This isn't paid by the Social Security. This is paid for by the Mutua. This is the insurance company that insure you as a worker. So if you fall over and break your leg, they pay you every day. It's almost like a private policy that all autonomos pay for. But we are actually getting paid by them. We are not stopping being autonomos. We are actually, it's almost like we've been suspended and we're on the sick. So this payment will come in. It's supposed to be about 644 euros. And we've been informed that they're doing it pretty fast. So if you applied, they want to try and wait for it to give you a full month's payment. So if you applied the last 2 weeks in March, you should be looking at the next week or two. So autonomos, it looked like we were being left out, but we're actually not. It's a completely separate system, but they're moving. They're moving.
And let's face it, I mean, no part of the system has been built to be capable to take care of everyone. So what the government of Spain and governments all around Europe and around the world have had to do is figure out which parts of the system apply to which people, and how do we get that into action to make sure that people aren't running out of money or being turfed out in the streets or starving. But I think the clear message, certainly from my side to everyone, is don't panic. Things are tough right now, and they're going to get a little bit tougher too, but we're going to be all right. Every single one of us is going to be all right, as long as we're looking out for each other. And I think this feeds back also to you requesting that, you know, people feed back to you when they see some movement. If they get some payment, if they're told something that's happening is going to be sorted out for them in a particular timescale, let us know that. You know, at the end of the day, Nicky Gordon is not the all-knowing goddess. She just puts herself out there to be a goddess of finding out. And we here, we have lots of different feeds of information and news coming straight into us here. But the fact is, nobody knows the answers. It's only by working as a community, by working together and keeping each other informed, that we're all going to be able to figure out how we get through every part of this, and trying to look out for the people who are clearly going to suffer. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people suffering a little bit more than they remember doing so, probably since they were 25. You know,
there's another really important issue, and I hate being negative. I'd never want to be the bearer of difficult news, but I want everybody to be prepared. With the autonomos, the whole idea originally was they didn't know to start with whether or not we'd all stop being autonomo, stop making all our payments, and then restart again afterwards and catch up with our taxes. When the Mutua came up with this is a perfect situation, but the Mutua aren't the social security. They are paid and they are fed by your autonomo payments. So we were told that we had to pay April's autonomo, whatever happened, to be eligible. It looks like we may have to pay March had to be paid.
That's
It
right,
looks like we'll have to pay April and May's, because the government didn't make the they didn't adjust the system, which sounds awful. So it would mean that you get 644, but they take 300 straight back for your autonomo.
right.
They're looking now to regulate the system so that you will hopefully get it back. We can't say when.
No.
So it is.
But supplementing this, of course, there's also interest-free microcredit supposed to be available to autonomos to help them cover payments. And one would imagine
it's
not
interest. No, sorry.
Okay.
It's
No,
microcredit is interest-free for the tenants.
for
the
rental
rentals.
tenants in housing.
Right.
Okay.
The autonomo loans have an interest. It's very low. They're trying to do it at the moment. One of the banks that one of my friends has been accepted from, they offered 2.5%. For the first year, you only pay the interest, which for them worked out something like €50 a month. And then for the second year up to the fifth year, you pay whatever it is that you have to pay back on your loan. If you borrowed €20,000, it could be 200 or €300 a month. It's all dependent on what you've borrowed. But what they're saying is those were never interest free. But
Right.
they're trying to help out by a lot of the banks are offering the first year you only pay the interest on it. So it would mean that from now on we're really struggling. If you get it this month, then till next April, that you only pay the interest and then you start paying the loan back.
I mean, it's a harsh reality, but the simple fact is, and I think we've said this from the very first show that we did, there isn't a big pot of money there just to give people a break with. They're trying the best they can. They're trying to not profiteer off the situation, but at the same time, they're trying to avoid bankrupting the country completely. And so they're trying to find middle ways that will keep everyone going and allow us all to move forward and continue with some semblance of how things were before. Of course, we've got to all ask ourselves. I mean, lots of people have had a lot of time to reflect. Will things go back ever to the way that they were before this all started? I fancy that we have entered a completely new era of how things will be. And I think some of that is also signaled by the continued talk of universal basic income. Have you heard much about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's popping up everywhere. The problem we have is that we're mixing all the UK information with the information over here. The UK television is posting that we're all coming out of lockdown.
I don't watch UK television, so I'm not doing that.
You're really lucky. You're really lucky. But I can understand, because it's human nature. You look at it, you hear it, and then you ask me. So I must have had 100 messages this morning. Is it true the lockdown's finishing next week? No, it's not.
No,
it's
not at all.
Finishing next week. Basically,
the current date is 26th of April, isn't it?
26th of April. It stays as it is.
Right.
Then they're looking for another one from the 26th of April to the 10th of May.
That's right.
It's not been confirmed yet. I have this feeling that this is going to be the one where they start letting the kids out and they start letting the personal training one person alone. Maybe they'll open some of the workplaces. Maybe, I don't know if it's going to be offices. Hopefully, if it's the town hall and different places, it would be amazing. Sure. But I read an article on it today, and it was very, very informative. they almost want to use us as the guinea pigs, because we're the ones that really did what we were supposed to, and we've come out of this so
When you
well.
say us, who are you referring to?
The Canary Islands,
Canary Islands.
Spain want to use us as their trial testers. And the way it works is that if we do what we're told and we follow their guidelines and we're all allowed out, we might have to wear masks because obviously the contagion can't be passed, just in case, because we haven't got tests for everybody to find out whether we have it or not. If we follow their guidelines, not only can we get this sorted out, that we can also slowly work our way back into normality, so that when maybe in September, October, November, the international flights start coming in, we know to begin with that we're all clear on the island, we control the people coming in. It's a big step. It's
Well, this is what I'm saying, really. I suppose I cannot see us at any time in the foreseeable future going back to how things were prior to March of this year. Certainly over the next 6 months, probably over the next 12 months, and I feel almost certain longer than that. We're going to have a whole bunch of extra things that we need to think about. There's been a couple of somber numbers coming through this week. The global COVID detection rate topped over 1 million people this week. Here in the Canary Islands, we went over 100 deaths. And when you look at that number, you think 100 deaths, that's pretty terrible. But actually, the Canary Islands have been extremely lucky, and partially because of the cooperation of everyone involved. Everyone got right behind this very, very quickly, unsure as they were as to what was happening. They knew that they had one job, and that was to try and slow this whole thing down. It appears we've done that, but the problem is, of course, that means that we won't know until we're all tested, but that means the likelihood is we're all still susceptible to this virus. And once flights start again, we're going to need to know whether or not people are coming in with the virus or not. It's going to be a real restriction on freedoms. Government is going to have a lot more control, and a lot of people aren't going to like that. But I can't see what else we can do in this situation. I thank goodness that we're in the Canary Islands and not in Madrid, or indeed in the United States, or any of the countries that were actually fairly slow to act. Here in the Canary Islands, it became very quickly apparent that we needed to do what we were being asked to do, and we did. And that means we've had a lot less deaths and a lot less infections than we could have otherwise expected. But of course, that still means, assuming that we haven't already had it, that most of us are still potentially infectable.
Yeah. And the problem we've got as well is you've got to understand it's going to be really difficult, because if on the 26th or next week they turn around and say children can go out, you can go out on your own. If there's a rise in cases, it will stop again.
That's right.
And the problem is we can't go too fast, because we can undo the good things that we've done. We can undo it. We need to actually all have 60 to 80% of us need to have had the COVID slowly. It's not a matter of, there's 0 deaths, everybody's clear the island, it doesn't exist. No, because the contagion, I can go to the spa today for half an hour and I can infect myself and my whole family. We can get through it. Nobody knows we're getting through it because we haven't been tested. There's nothing to scare anybody about. But at the moment, we have to look at those figures. The more people we can keep out of the intensive care units, the better.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of step by step. It's great to say in September we can all have our jobs back and our wages coming in. No, you can't, because you're working in bars and restaurants. Who's going to provide the trade? Who are going to be sitting and eating in those restaurants? We will support our local businesses wherever we can once they're open. But don't rush to be open. Don't rush your bosses to open it all up, employ 6 of you, and nobody comes in. That's what they're trying to do. This is with the universal credit. It would be absolutely Perfect.
So I just
Sorry.
you've mentioned the universal credit there. I just want to roll back a little bit to one of my questions earlier, whether or not you had much information about the universal basic income. I don't
Yeah.
know how much you know about this concept. It's something that's been discussed and analysed for more than 100 years. Actually, it's not a new idea, and you've got characters as famous as Bernie Sanders in the States, and Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, and lots of other big players on the political scene who have looked very closely at these ideas. And so the idea of universal basic income is, instead of focusing all of our supplemental social payments towards helping people when they apply because they don't have an income and they need help, instead looking at the citizenship of the entire country as individuals who require a basic level of income. And so therefore, and this has been trialed in countries all over the world, Australia, Finland, all over the world, whereby every single individual in a country, so long as they're properly registered and they're a citizen, and they're declaring themselves honestly, then every single individual, whether they're earning 100 grand a year or £5 an hour, everybody gets a basic level of income of somewhere between, it can be anywhere between, I think, 200 and 1,000 euros a month, dependent on the country and the schemes they're running. But the whole idea of this is that nobody can ever say, I don't have access to some sort of income. And what they found is, through repeated tests, I mean, anyone who wants to can look this up, they can argue with me if they like, but the basic idea here is that this scheme in the end saves a country money. It's a lot cheaper to administrate than unemployment benefits and disability benefits, which all have to sit there as well as an extra cap on the situation. But the universal basic income means that, because we know exactly how much we're spending per capita, each individual receives this money. People are better off. The country is better off. We no longer need to scrutinize applications, because everyone is able to say, okay, at least I've got 200 quid this month to be able to feed the kids on 50 quid a week, like many of us have discovered before. So, and people think this has been framed here in Spain as a response to COVID-19, and we're being looked at by the global press right now as the world's first country looking to implement this. The simple fact is, however, here in Spain, universal basic income has been under discussion for many years. We've had a right-wing government for many years, and now we have returned to a left-wing coalition. And it was actually in January of this year, with no real thought for contagion or infection, that Pedro Sanchez, your mate Pedro, the Prime Minister of Spain, and Pablo Iglesias, who's the leader of Podemos, Unidas Podemos, who he's in a coalition with, the two of them put this forward to the Cortes as part of their electoral program. This is something that they have been wanting to try to get through. And now that we're in the situation we're in with lockdown, they're trying to fast track this idea. And this idea is basically, and especially in a country where we have something between 15 and 20% unemployment. Here in the Canary Islands, we range between 18 and sort of, I think that the highest I've ever seen it was 27% unemployment. There's a lot of people without work, unable to find work. And a scheme like this, where a country was economically being funded by the companies and the economic activity of the businesses in that country, would allow everyone in the country to feel a certain security blanket, so that when we arrived in extreme situations like this one, nobody would be able to say, I have no idea where next week's food is coming from. I have no idea where the rent's coming from. I have no idea how I'm going to make it through. And so this is something that's happening in Spain today, and it's a very interesting, exciting, but also a very scary time for a lot of people. You know,
I think the problem is at the moment with the UBI or the UBI is that, because of the rest of it not being sorted out on time, people are like, yeah. I will believe it when I see it, but it would be amazing. It's one of those, watch this space, hold your breath, and if it looks like England and America and Germany and France don't get the coronavirus under control, then we need longer on the unemployment system. Maybe this would be just what we need, because it's horrible we're English, we're very typical. We don't like taking loans out. We don't like taking loans out. They're not giving us money, they're lending us money. And people seem to have this awful feeling of, what happens if I borrow 30,000 because I've got an expensive locale to run and I've got members of staff to pay? What would happen if they couldn't pay it back, or things didn't work out? There's so much stress at the moment. So I can understand from the employers. We've been through now how to get yourself legal. We need to, I'm not going to panic anybody till next week about Brexit, because we've only got till December 2020 to get.
I'd forgotten about that. I thought that had gone away.
No, but we've only got, and the problem is people that are starting on a new contract that might be in September, October or November do not have the minimum requirements of a 6-month contract with the trial period completed. So I'm actually going to have a chat later on this week with the British consulate and see if they've got anything to implement to help us, because nobody expected this. I'm hoping that December 2020 will become December 2021. If
the type of information that was going from the British government to their consulates and embassies around the world during the whole Brexit fiasco is anything to judge by, I would suggest the consul will have scant, if any, information really about how people can be helped in this situation. Exactly. From what I can see, that essentially the staff who run these consulates are extraordinarily hardworking. They do their very best in often terrible situations to try to help British nationals, in the particular case of British consul. But of course, consulates from every nation work like this. They do their best for the nationals of their countries. And unfortunately, with the political situation in the UK over the last few years, and in particular in the last 6 months, I would suggest that there is going to be very little provision for people to be helped with, for instance, starting a new life in Spain, or indeed even trying to get back to the UK if they think they can't live in Spain any further. And so I think it's good to have a conversation, certainly, and consult them what they know. But often they're trapped, the consulate staff, because they can't say anything against the people that they essentially are serving.
But we actually haven't. We're on the same pathway, and basically, as soon as the lockdown allows certain people to go back to work and they're earning again, and it's something that's got to be done in the background. There's people that know that they've got to do it. I know, you know, they know they've got to do it, but it was put off and put off and put off. If you are specifically eligible to do your residencia before December, as soon as we're back to work, or as soon as the police station's open, or the people that are non-working, they've got the medical insurance paid up front, they've got their 5,000 in the bank each for the last 6 months. The retired people, I put on all my posts on my to-do list, get all your translations, your S1 retirement forms, get them all sent over now while we're sitting at home. Ask Jenny Hoffel or whoever to do your translations for your birth certificates, marriage certificates. Do it. That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to access all the things that I put off and didn't do. It's never too late.
So, I mean, for anyone who's just joining us, we've been having a long and meandering conversation about the current situation and lockdown on Gran Canaria, and indeed the wider situation in the Canary Islands and in Spain, particularly from the perspective of foreign residents. I know Nicky here, Nicky Gordon, does a lot of work, primarily with British, but also other nationalities, helping them to integrate into the systems that are set up here in the Canary Islands and Spain. But of course, all of us are in new territory right now, and so we've been trying to see if we can get as much of the right information out there as possible to help people to just keep a bit calm, keep breathing, make sure you understand that you're not completely isolated, but the system is not set up to deal with the current situation, and none of us are either. All we can do is try our best to really focus on, okay, how do we get through what has to happen and how are we going to plan for what goes in the future. And you've been saying the whole way along, I know, people need to take the time to think about not where the beer and the fags and the chocolate is coming from, but instead be thinking about what do I need to do to make sure that I'm getting as much help as is available to me. And if that help is still not sufficient, then how do I reach out to ensure that I'm getting some sort of assistance? And of course, you're integral to that.
Also, the other way around as well is that don't forget in the haze of it all that if you can pay your electricity bill this month, or your water bill, or your telephone bill, or your autonomo, or your whatever you've got direct debits, do it, because if you've got a little bit of savings, then you can get yourself ahead. I know a lot of us don't, so there isn't the situation, but as soon as your benefits come in, if you've got 644 because you're self-employed and your partner's got 800 because they worked in a bar, add it together, pay March and April's bills. Do it.
Yeah, if you can do, definitely.
If you can do it.
We're seeing a reordering as well. So there was a lot of people who were very blasé about their situation because they had their solid income, which possibly was 80% being paid in black money, but they knew what they were getting every month. They felt secure in their situations. We've got other people who were really on the lowest rungs of society, under the poverty line, who find themselves actually in a very similar situation today as a lot of those others who were perhaps ignorant of the fact that they needed to do a lot more to stay in the system and properly registered for what they do. I know one particular guy, a lovely friend of mine. He's been homeless for a couple of years. He's been living in a cave, believe it or not, and he has been. He doesn't always understand everything that's happening in the world. So far as politics and self-isolation and pandemics goes, he has learning difficulties of his own sort. But he finds himself in an extraordinarily strange situation where he now has an envious position where he's isolated from other people. The cave that he lives in happens to be in a very pretty place, and he can't go out anyway. So he's not having to spend money. But myself with the other charitable organizations we work with, we've made sure that he's been kept in food and he's been kept in contact. But he is not any worse off really than a lot of others who find themselves now with no job, no income, no benefits, and no ability to pay their bills. All of us are just 30 days away from being in a situation of destitution, it would seem. And this is what I say about a great reordering. All of us are really having to think about what is important in life. Why did we come to Gran Canaria? It wasn't to be out drinking every night, and it wasn't to be necessarily working till 3 a.m. in bars. It was for quality of life, so that we essentially can live a better life than we felt that we would get elsewhere. I think it's very important for people to understand that although this isn't a great leveler, I mean, I think there's been a bit too much of this idea of everyone suddenly coming to the same position, because there's a lot of people who are still there's the have-nots and there's the definitely do have a lot mores, right? But at the same time, all of us need to be reflecting on, do we really need to be working 80-hour weeks? Do we really need that new flat screen television? Or is the most important things in our lives the ability to speak to people, connect to people, hug, watch your children grow, and help other members of our community? And I think this has really brought that home to a lot of people. While they start to suffer themselves, it's very easy to look at yourself and say, poor me, poor me. But actually, everyone is suffering in one respect or another. And now is a great opportunity for people to really start to live their best lives and be their best version of themselves,
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. We've had a lot of situations at the moment, as we were talking about people that are not in good places. Most people on the island, we all have issues. We all have our good days and our bad days. Some of us can lift ourselves out ourselves, and then tomorrow's another day. And some people need help. I asked I didn't realise that there'd been a site formed, Lockdown Mental Health GC.
Oh, it's a
And it was
wonderful,
perfect.
wonderful page, isn't it? Yeah. This was started
So,
a few weeks ago by a young lady who's been in communication with us as well. She just started it, I think generally for herself to make sure there was other people there who could connect to, in her own isolation, offer that helping hand of friendship to others. And I think she's found it suddenly taking off. People, yeah, and basically it's about positivity and keeping your head up and not allowing this situation to get on top of you. It's a wonderful Facebook page for anyone who's looking for that. That's a lockdown mental health, is it?
Lockdown Mental Health GC. But
Yep.
what had happened was I'd approached Steve Cashley to see if I could
For anyone who doesn't know him, Steve Cashley is an extraordinarily capable, intelligent chap who spends a lot of time helping various community groups and other people around the island. And has an IT business here in the south of Gran Canaria. Sorry, it's gone.
Yeah, so obviously Steve Cashley's got Jobs and Help along with the other administrators, but I saw that he had friends in GC and he'd messaged that it had gone quiet, the page, because nobody's going out or anything. So I said to him, can I use the page? Can I use this for us so that all those people that need company? And he said, of course. And then he passed me on to Lockdown Mental Health because I didn't realise it existed. So I redid my post. So I think we're up to nearly 400 members now. But the thing is I haven't had chance to actually breathe the last 2 days, so I haven't had chance to actually go in it. But basically, people can PM us. I'm an admin. People can PM us when they need to talk, because on this island, you can't just open up on Facebook, because not everybody that's reading it is reading it with concern. They're reading it with curiosity.
But let's be clear as well. I mean, Facebook is a public social network. It's probably not the ideal place for people to publicly shout out that all of their worries and concerns and problems and expect everyone to be kind, right? Not everyone is being kind, although we try to encourage that with more kindness, right? Let's hug that shit out of them. But if people need to reach out, then the right way to do it is probably to reach out to people who are on groups like this. Direct message. There's lots of caring people who work very hard to make sure that people on this island don't feel alone or isolated or underserved. And so, I think it's a very good idea to encourage people to do that, but probably not shouting about every single problem in a public forum. That's probably not the best way. We're coming up to 8 o'clock, Nicky. So unfortunately, this half-hour chat is coming to an end after an hour. We've done very well. I just wanted to address a couple of the questions that we've had in the comments during the broadcast tonight. One from Rick Bell. He's asked about ITV on cars, which is essentially the MOT here in Spain. He says, what happens if it's due? Can you still use your car?
Of course you can, until the lockdown's finished, and then you just make your appointment and whip it up to Tablero.
I wonder if they're actually taking appointments at the moment. Do you know?
No, the system's down.
Right.
And they were, when the lockdown went on, they were actually still taking appointments. And I told everybody that it was still open. And then I realised that they hadn't adjusted the system. So no, but you're okay.
So in theory, if your ITV has run out during the time of the declaration of emergency, right? So if it ran out on the 12th of March, they may not be so lenient, but anytime after the 14th of March, then you potentially, and you need to get proper advice. Obviously, we're not lawyers, but at the same time, our understanding is that there's nobody's really trying to check for car paperwork right now. They're checking for infection and contagion.
Yeah, and if you've lost your residency, you've lost your NI number, you've lost your driving license, you've lost anything, it doesn't matter that you haven't got it on you. It's everything's stopped, because obviously you can't just go to the police station. Normally, people are saying you can do a denuncia, a police report, to carry a police report. They don't want people doing police reports for handbag losses, paperwork losses. They need to save themselves for the big stuff.
Yeah.
So everything's on hold. You will not be chased for your water, your electricity, your mobiles. We're not sure about. I paid mine just in case because I can't do without my internet and I can't do without my phone. So
Certainly.
it's one of those things. Just don't take any chances. Tomorrow I'll put a post up in the morning. There's one issue that we haven't got time to do, but there's a lot of very concerned people about the landlords who are
Right.
starting to get a little bit nasty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I've done with the other 70 messages that I've received. I'm going to put the link for the BOE, which was the official state bulletin saying you can't be evicted and they have to sort it out. I'm also going to do this very informative link in Spanish to give to whoever it is, email it to them, WhatsApp it to them, that basically says that you will be applying for a microcredit. They just have to be patient. If they own over 8 properties, you only have to pay 50% of the rent, which they're not going to like very much. But I know 4 people so far that I sent them the Bowie and the link. They got in touch with the landlord.
So wait a minute. If a landlord owns over 8 properties, that doesn't specifically change the rent for their tenants, does it? That is just that the government are going to guarantor a certain amount of money, which decreases the more properties they have. Is that right?
I keep on reading it and I will stand to be corrected because the way I've been told is that if they've got over 8 properties, they, for the duration of the 6 months, because everybody's basing this whole coronavirus link on 6 months maximum. They're saying take your loan out for 6 months, dole for 6 month unemployment. Everything's based on 6, maybe 9 at the most in some cases. But for the rentals, the way I looked at it was that for those 6 months, if they've got over 8 properties, you only pay half your rent.
Okay, I would be careful with that advice for the moment. I think what we'll do is, obviously we haven't had time to cover it properly tonight, but perhaps we can make Thursday focused more towards rental.
I'll send you the link tomorrow.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think it's very important that, from what I understand, in essence, nobody can be evicted. That is absolute. Right now, you're not allowed. Landlords cannot evict you, regardless of the situation, because we all have to maintain ourselves in our homes, and so they can't turf you out of your home. Secondarily, communicating with your landlord often will result, especially if you're a good tenant, often will result in the landlord trying to work with you. And I've heard lots of stories of landlords reducing the rent over this period for their tenants. But I think we need to be careful about instructing people to only pay a certain amount of their rent. My understanding was that the government is offering the microcredit to be able to cover rents. Unless your landlord and you agree something different, then that rent essentially is due. So I think we should look at it and come back with our agreed idea.
No, but you are right, because you would only take a microcredit for the 6 months for half of the rent. Yes, that's right, if they've got over 8 properties. But there's a lot of people that don't meet the criterion for microcredits. We're not all that lucky. There's people that worked in the black, so they only have 300 euros a month coming in, or 400 euros a month. They don't bother putting it into the bank accounts, so they've got no credit rating.
Certainly.
So I think that it works both ways, that microcredit of 50%, or they come to an agreement and say to the landlords,
maybe we can try to come up with a sort of a basic to-do list of what we know to be governmental instructions, and then some of the extra grey areas that go around it. At the end of the day, there's no complete right or wrong guide to this. We're all making it up as we go along, right? So just to address a couple of more questions that we've got, and then I'm afraid we'll have to call it a night. I'm sure you've got other things to do than sit nattering with me. We've got Nick Highland has written in to ask, are buses receiving cash again? Do you know anything about that? No. So at the end of the day, although the bus stations are open again, and you can go on the buses as long as you're taking appropriate precautions. They're handing out face masks in most of the transport hubs throughout Spain. To travel on Gran Canaria buses, at least, certainly, probably most of Spain, you have to have purchased a travel card of some sort.
And you have to be a resident. You apply for it online. You have to be a resident, and the prepaid non-residents card they took out of existence because
Oh, really?
they want the minimum people travelling, and they were being quite tough about it. You have to be resident and working here. You should be resident with a residence permit.
I mean, there's a possibility they may have started to relax that a little bit. It could be that they started off very, very strictly. Right, let's stop as much as we can. But obviously, we're in a fluid situation right now. Just one last question from Daniel Knight, who tells us he came here for health reasons, and he does his best to try and cheer other people up. He wants to know: is it two questions he's got? Is it possible to hire a car during lockdown? And he wants to know if it's possible for us to set up a food bank donation account, which I think I'm going to answer myself. But do you know anything about hire cars at the moment during lockdown? Are hire companies working?
I wouldn't recommend it because with the restriction of movement, you're only supposed to be going to the supermarket and the bank. So I can't see that would be. You can't drive around the island.
I tell you what we'll do. I'll do some homework tomorrow. I'll ring around a few of the hire companies and see what they've got to say. So we'll have an answer for that on Thursday, a direct answer as to whether or not any of them have managed to go back to serving people. Certainly, there's a huge amount of extra restrictions that they would have to consider. Obviously, hire cars.
There will be hire cars available for workers, but as with Daniel, when you're at home and you're a non-worker, to pay €300 out for a car when you only need to go out 3 or 4
It sounds
times.
like you know more about Daniel than the rest of us do. Okay. And so just to address your last point, Daniel Knight, thank you very much for watching. I've noticed you've been on a few of our different programs over the last few weeks. Food bank donation account. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but this week, yesterday, in fact, we got a sneak preview of a collaborative effort from performers here on Gran Canaria who've put out a cover version of a very famous song. They've done that in basically to show their love for Gran Canaria and in the hope of being able to raise some funds and awareness for our local food bank charity here on the south of the island, the Food Project. We at the Canary TV here are just looking into all of the copyright issues that are involved in us being able to release that. So there's certainly already a first effort to be able to raise money for those who need on food banks. And some of you may also know that myself and an astounding team of people do a coast-to-coast walk every year across the island. We have a not-for-profit charitable association, and so we are setting up a fund where people will be able to donate there. So I think we'll probably give all of the details for that over the next couple of days, and then we can talk about it on Thursday. So yes, certainly there's lots of ways that people can get involved and help each other. Nicky, I want to thank you so much for coming to join us again. We just don't have enough time in our half hour, even when we double it. There we go. But you're doing an awesome job. You're working so hard for other people. I know at the end of the day, you offer a professional service, right? So really your time should be getting paid for. And you've very, very gallantly taken it on the chin with everyone else and said, right, nobody has money to pay for all of my services right now, although I'm sure they must still contribute to some of the services that you have to offer. Yeah.
On a really nice note.
Yeah.
I can stand with my hand on my heart. I know a lot of people on the island. My kids are driving them mad because I know people in every village and I've known them. I've been here for 30 years and they're nice to me. I'm nice to them. And I have not heard of any death within the people that I know. I know 2 people that have lost friends. That makes it worthwhile. I'm not going to cry because it made me fill up then. But all I can say is I hold on to the hope that all of us, for good, for bad, we might be skinny, we might be fat, we might have divorced our partners, we might have found new partners in the supermarket. Whatever happens, as long as we're alive and breathing, then it was worth it all.
We're doing okay, aren't we?
Well,
You know,
what's the-
remember, any of those partners that you find in a supermarket, you can always take them back when you're finished with them. So, Nicky Gordon, it's been a wonderful, wonderful hour. Thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight. We've got a lot of people who've come to say hello and sending us messages. Remember, you can find Nicky Gordon on her page, Ask Nicky, and also on one of these many different sites that she adds information to, one of the biggest being, of course, Jobs and Help GC on Facebook. I almost said fake book there. My name is Edward Timon. This is your
Is it
community.
really?
Who knows? This is your community television project, the Canary TV. We're trying to keep you all together, keeping you focused on the fact that we are all getting through this, and we're doing fantastically. So keep on doing fantastically, everyone. Take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, there's no point being here if you don't love Gran Canaria. And if you are here, you will love Gran Canaria. We love you. See you later.
Keep safe.
Bye-bye.
See you Thursday. Bye for now.